Get out!
Dale Greer's gaze fixed on Florence.
You stink. You're disgusting!
A 72-year-old black woman, alone at a window booth.
Please, I'm waiting for my family.
Family?
He laughed.
One beggar wasn't enough, now a whole bunch?
Sir, I've already paid.
He slammed his hand on the table. Plates clattered. The whole diner jumped.
Let me be clear. You don't belong here.
Florence lifted her head, slowly.
I've paid for my meal, sir.
That's all. Are you deaf?
Dale's face flushed. Florence ignored him, kept eating. A flash of anger in Dale's eyes. He snatched her plate, steak, greens, cornbread, hurled it into the trash. Porcelain shattered, food scattered across the floor.
Now pick it up and eat it. That suits you better.
12 witnesses, silent. Outside, a helicopter was on its way, carrying what Dale should fear most. 6 hours earlier, morning sun crept through lace curtains on Maple Drive. A small house sat at the end of a quiet street in a black neighborhood outside Fayetteville, North Carolina. The garden was perfect, every bush trimmed, every flower standing tall. Inside, Florence Turner was already awake. She stood at the ironing board, pressing a floral blouse she hadn't worn in months. The iron hissed against fabric. Steam rose in soft white clouds. The smell of starch mixed with coffee brewing on the counter. She held the blouse up to the window light, checked every crease, smoothed the collar with her thumb. This blouse mattered today. On the mantel sat a framed photograph of a man in a factory uniform. Earl Turner. Strong jaw, kind eyes, a smile that looked like it could fix anything. Florence walked over, coffee in hand. "I'm going to that diner today, baby," she said softly. "The one on Route 9. You remember it? You always got the country fried steak. I always stole your cornbread." She laughed quietly, touched the glass with her fingertip. "Wish you were coming with me." Earl had died 26 years ago. Machine malfunction at the textile factory. He was 46. Raymond was 11. Florence was left with a boy to raise, a mortgage to pay, and a teaching salary that barely covered either. But she did it. 40 years in the same elementary school, same classroom. She taught 3 generations of children how to read, how to add, how to believe they were worth something, even when the world told them otherwise. Raymond was her proof. He joined the army at 18, rose through the ranks like a man running uphill and refusing to stop. Now he was a 2-star general, deputy commander at Fort Liberty, just 20 minutes away. He had called 3 days ago. "Mama, I want to take you somewhere special for your birthday." "Boy, I don't need anything fancy." "It's not fancy. It's Rosie's, Route 9, you and Daddy's old spot." Florence had gone quiet. She hadn't been to that diner in over 30 years. Not since Earl. "I'll be there at noon," Raymond said. "I'm sending someone to meet you first. Just sit tight and wait for me." Now Florence stood in her bedroom, clasping her church earrings, small gold crosses Earl had given her on their 20th anniversary. She looked in the mirror. Floral blouse, navy slacks, earrings catching the light. She looked like a woman going somewhere that mattered. She drove herself. An old Buick, washed that morning. The roads between her neighborhood and Route 9 were lined with pine trees and gas stations. The sky was flat Carolina blue. Rosie's Route 9 diner appeared around a bend, a long, low building with a red neon sign, checkered curtains, and a parking lot full of pickup trucks. The kind of place that served sweet tea in mason jars and put gravy on everything. Florence parked near the back, sat in the car for a moment. The last time she walked through that door, Earl was beside her. She went in alone. The bell above the door jingled. Bacon grease and biscuits hit her immediately. A jukebox hummed country music in the corner. The floor was black and white tile, cracked in places but clean. A dozen customers sat scattered across booths and counter stools. Truckers, a retired couple sharing pie, a young mother wiping her toddler's face. Almost all white. A few heads turned when Florence walked in, then turned back. Connie Beckett, 24, blonde ponytail, came over with a menu and a smile. "Morning, ma'am. Just one today?" "Yes, sweetheart. I'm expecting family later." "Take any booth you like." Florence chose the window booth, the same one she and Earl used to sit in. She ran her hand across the table like she was touching a memory. She ordered the country fried steak special. "My husband and I used to split one," she told Connie, 30-some years ago. Connie smiled. "That's sweet. I'll make sure they give you a good one." In the back office, a door opened. Dale Greer stepped out, clipboard in hand, scanning the diner the way a prison guard scans a yard. His eyes moved table to table, until they stopped on Florence. He stared, jaw tight. He leaned toward the cook and whispered something. The cook glanced at Florence, looked away. Dale checked his watch, adjusted his collar, and started walking toward her booth. Dale Greer didn't introduce himself. He didn't say good morning. He didn't ask how she was doing. He just stood at the edge of her booth, arms crossed, blocking the light from the window like a man guarding a door that was never meant to open for her. Florence looked up. "Can I help you, sir?" Dale tilted his head, looked her up and down, slowly, deliberately, the way someone inspects something stuck to the bottom of their shoe. His lip curled just slightly, just enough to make sure she saw it. "Yeah, you can help me by telling me how you plan to pay for that." Florence blinked. "Excuse me?" "The food. How are you paying?" "I already paid at the register. The young lady rang me up." Dale didn't move, didn't blink. He let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. "That's so?" "Yes, sir, I paid cash." He let out a short laugh through his nose, not a real laugh, the kind meant to make someone feel small, the kind that says, "I don't believe you, and I don't need to." "See, here's the thing. We have a policy. New customers need a card on file before they eat, especially ones we haven't seen before." Florence looked around the diner. A trucker 2 booths away had just paid cash. She watched the coins land on the counter. No card on file. No questions asked. Nobody standing over him demanding explanations. "Sir, that gentleman just paid cash. Nobody asked him for a card." Dale's smile disappeared. His eyes narrowed. "I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about you." The emphasis on the word "you" sat in the air like a stain. Florence felt it. The trucker heard it. Connie, behind the counter, froze mid-pour. The coffee overflowed onto the saucer, and she didn't even notice. Florence set her napkin down, folded it carefully. Her hands were steady. "I understand you have policies, sir, but I've already paid. I'm just waiting for my son. He'll be here at noon." "Your son." Dale repeated the words like they were a joke he'd heard before and didn't find funny the first time. "Sure, and what's your son gonna do? Come in here and beg too?" The retired couple in the corner exchanged a glance. The husband shook his head slowly. His wife put her hand on his arm, a silent "don't." Florence kept her voice even. "My son is meeting me here for my birthday. He arranged this lunch for me." "Birthday." Dale snorted. "Lady, I don't know who told you this was the place for a birthday party, but look around. These people are paying customers, regulars. They come here because this is a clean, respectable establishment, and I intend to keep it that way." He let the sentence hang, let the meaning settle into every corner of the room. Clean, respectable, and you don't fit. Florence understood exactly what he was saying. She had heard it before, in different words, different decades, different diners. The language changed over the years. The meaning never did. Not once. She took a breath, straightened her floral blouse, the one she had ironed that morning, the one she had chosen because today was supposed to be special. Sir, I am a retired school teacher. I taught for 40 years in this town. I have lived here my entire life. I can assure you, I can pay for a plate of food. Something flickered across Dale's face. Not shame, not hesitation. Annoyance. The annoyance of a man who expected obedience and got dignity instead. He wasn't used to that, not from someone who looked like Florence. I didn't ask for your life story, Grandma. The word grandma, not said with warmth, not said the way Amara said it, said the way you'd say pest or stray, said to shrink her down to nothing. The young mother in the far booth covered her toddler's ears. She felt what was coming before it came. Dale stepped closer, close enough that Florence could smell the cigarettes on his breath, close enough that his shadow fell across her food.
Let me tell you how this works. This is my restaurant, mine. I decide who eats here and who doesn't, and I've decided you don't. Florence looked at her plate. Country fried steak, collard greens, cornbread. The same meal she and Earl used to share 30 years ago at this very table. She had said grace over it. She had picked up her fork. She had been ready to take the first bite. She wasn't going to leave it. I'm not leaving, sir. I've done nothing wrong. Dale's neck went red. His jaw locked. His right hand opened and closed at his side like he was squeezing something invisible. What did you just say to me? I said I'm not leaving. The diner went dead quiet. No forks scraping plates. No murmur of conversation. Even the jukebox seemed to hold its breath between songs. Dale reached across the table. He grabbed the plate with both hands. Florence's fingers were still near her fork. He didn't care. He ripped the plate away so fast the silverware scattered across the table and a knife clattered onto the floor. He turned, walked to the trash can behind the counter, and slammed the plate into the bin with every ounce of force in his body. The porcelain exploded. Steak hit the side of the bin. Collard greens slid down the plastic bag like something dying. Cornbread crumbled into pieces. Grease splattered up the wall behind the counter and hung there, dripping. The sound echoed through the diner like a gunshot. Florence sat motionless. Her hands were still on the table, right where the plate had been. Her fork lay sideways. A smear of gravy trailed from her place setting to the edge of the table. Dale walked back to her booth, stood over her again, breathing hard, veins thick on his neck. Now get your filthy ass out of my restaurant before I throw you out myself. Florence didn't move. Her chin trembled, just once. She pressed her lips together to stop it. She would not give him that. She would not cry in front of this man. Not here. Not today. The retired husband in the corner pushed his chair back. His wife grabbed his wrist. Don't, she whispered. He sat back down. He would be ashamed of that moment for the rest of his life. The young mother gathered her toddler and her bag and walked out the front door without paying. She couldn't stay in that room another second. Connie Beckett moved from behind the counter. Her face was white. Her hands were shaking. She walked up to Dale and spoke in a low voice, barely above a whisper. Dale, she paid. I was standing right there when Bonnie rang her up. $8.60. Cash. Dale turned on her like a dog snapping at its leash. Did I ask you? No, but she... Then shut your mouth. Or you can follow her out that door. Your choice, sweetheart. Connie stepped back. Her eyes were wet. She looked at Florence, a look that said everything and did nothing. An apology without sound, a conscience without courage. Florence sat alone. The smell of ruined food drifted from the trash can. Grease cooled slowly on the wall behind the counter. She reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, an old flip phone with big buttons. Her hands were shaking so badly, it took 3 tries to find the right number. It rang twice. Grandma? Amara's voice, young, bright, completely unknowing. Florence tried to speak. Her voice cracked on the first word. Baby, something happened at the restaurant. Grandma, what's wrong? Are you okay? Florence looked at the trash can, looked at the gravy smear on the table, looked at Dale, who had gone back behind the counter and was laughing, with a regular jerking his thumb toward her like she was a punchline to a joke the whole room was supposed to enjoy. That man threw my food away, baby, right in the garbage. He's telling me to leave. He called me things I don't want to repeat. Grandma, stay right there. Don't you move. I'm calling Daddy right now. Florence closed the phone, set it on the table next to the gravy stain. She folded her hands, straightened her back, looked out the window at the parking lot, at her old Buick sitting quiet in the sun. She thought about Earl, about the last time they sat in this very booth, about the way he always said, "Flo, you carry yourself like a queen. Don't let nobody tell you different." She was carrying herself like a queen right now, in a restaurant where her food had been stolen, where nobody defended her, where a man decided she was trash. And she stayed. Because Florence Turner did not hand her dignity to anyone. Dale didn't wait long. The moment Florence closed her phone, he was already dialing his. He picked up the diner's landline behind the counter, turned his back to the room, and spoke in a voice just loud enough for the nearest customers to hear, but low enough to sound official. "Yeah, Dwight, it's Dale. Got a situation down here at Rosie's. Older woman, black, came in acting confused. I think she might be, I don't know, disoriented or something. Maybe off her medication. She's refusing to leave, and she's making my customers uncomfortable. I need somebody down here." He hung up, smiled to himself, set the phone back on the cradle like he'd just placed an order for lunch. Florence heard none of it. She sat in the booth, hands clasped on the table, purse on her lap. She didn't move. She didn't make a sound. She breathed in through her nose, out through her mouth. The way she used to teach her first graders when they got upset on the playground. Slow, steady, in and out. The diner had thinned. 3 customers had quietly paid and left, not because of Florence, but because the air in the room had turned sour. Something ugly had happened, and nobody wanted to sit inside the smell of it. The ones who stayed kept their eyes on their plates. Nobody wanted to be part of what was happening, but nobody wanted to stop it either. Dale paced behind the counter, checked his watch, wiped down a section that was already clean. He was performing calm, but his jaw was still tight. His fingers drummed the surface in a restless rhythm. He kept glancing at Florence like she was an animal that might bolt. She didn't bolt. She didn't even shift in her seat. She just sat there, back straight, chin level, hands folded, like a woman in church waiting for the sermon to begin. 7 minutes later, a patrol car pulled into the parking lot. No sirens, no lights, just the slow crunch of gravel under tires and the soft click of a car door. Sheriff Dwight Kessler walked in, mid-50s, tan uniform pressed sharp, aviator sunglasses pushed up on his forehead, a belt that creaked with every step, holster, radio, cuffs, baton. He walked the way men walk when they believe every room they enter belongs to them. Dale rushed over, extended his hand,
shook it too hard. The handshake of a man who needed an ally and wanted to make sure he had one. "Dwight, thanks for coming. Appreciate it. Real quick, she's right over there." He nodded toward Florence. "Been sitting there for a while. Asked her to leave. She won't go. It's trespassing at this point. Straight up trespassing." Kessler looked across the diner. Saw a 72-year-old woman sitting perfectly still in a window booth. No shouting, no commotion, no broken furniture. Just a woman with a purse on her lap and her hands folded like she was praying. He walked over, stood at the edge of her booth, didn't sit down. "Ma'am, I'm Sheriff Kessler. Mind if I see some ID?" Florence looked up at him, calm, no fear. She opened her purse, pulled out her wallet, and handed him her driver's license. He glanced at it. Florence Elaine Turner. The address was local. The photo matched. He handed it back without a word. "Ma'am, the manager here says you've been asked to leave and you've refused. Is that correct?" "He threw my food in the trash, Sheriff. Food I already paid for. Then he told me to get out." Kessler's expression didn't change. Not a flicker of concern. Not a single follow-up question about the food, about the payment, about why a paying customer's meal was in a garbage can 10 feet away, with grease still dripping down the wall. "Ma'am, I understand that's frustrating, but the business owner has the right to refuse service. I'm going to need you to step outside so we can sort this out." "I'd prefer to stay inside, sir. I'm waiting for my family." "I'm not asking, ma'am. I'm telling you. Step outside. Now." Dale appeared at Kessler's shoulder like a shadow, waiting for permission to take shape. Arms crossed, chin up, emboldened. The sheriff was his backup, his validation, his proof that he had been right all along. "She's trespassing, Dwight. Plain and simple. I asked her to leave. She refused. That's trespassing." Florence looked at Dale, then at Kessler, then at the diner full of people who had watched everything and done nothing. Not one face met her eyes. She stood up, slowly, picked up her purse, straightened her blouse, and walked toward the door with the posture of a woman who had spent 40 years standing in front of classrooms. Shoulders back, head high, steps measured. As she passed the counter, Dale leaned toward a regular on a stool and muttered, just loud enough for Connie and 2 other customers to hear. Should have known better than to walk in here like she owns the place. These people, man. Every damn time. Connie's hand tightened around the coffee pot so hard her knuckles turned white. She opened her mouth, then closed it, then looked at the floor. Outside, the afternoon sun hit Florence's face. The parking lot was half empty. A hot breeze carried the smell of pine and asphalt. A mockingbird sat on the diner's neon sign, singing like nothing in the world was wrong. Kessler followed her out, stood with his arms crossed, weight on one leg, casual, like this was a routine stop, and not a woman's dignity being scraped off the floor. "Ma'am, I'd suggest you find somewhere else to eat. There's a McDonald's about 2 miles up the road. Might be more your speed." More your speed. Florence didn't respond. She walked to the wooden bench beside the front door and sat down, set her purse beside her, rested her hands in her lap. She looked down at her floral blouse, the one she had ironed that morning, the one she had chosen because today, her birthday, was supposed to mean something. She thought about Earl, about the cornbread she used to steal from his plate, about the way he'd pretend to be mad and then laugh so hard the whole booth would shake, about the drive home with the windows down and the radio playing something slow and sweet. A single tear rolled down her cheek. She wiped it with the back of her hand, quickly, because Florence Turner had cried exactly twice in public in her entire life. Once at Earl's funeral, and once when Raymond graduated from officer school. She wasn't adding a third time on a bench outside a diner
that had just thrown her away. In the parking lot, a young woman sat in a silver Honda Civic, college student, passing through. She had been eating a granola bar when she noticed the scene through the diner window. Now, she watched Florence sitting alone on the bench, a 72-year-old woman in a floral blouse, wiping tears in the middle of the afternoon. She raised her phone, hit record, and didn't stop. 19 miles away, at Fort Liberty, Amara Turner burst through the door of her housing unit with her phone already at her ear. Raymond picked up on the first ring. "Baby girl, what's wrong?" Amara was crying. The words came fast, tumbling over each other. "Daddy, Grandma called me. She's at that diner on Route 9. Some manager threw her food in the trash, called her disgusting, called her a beggar. The police are there and they made her go outside. She's sitting on a bench by herself, Daddy, on her birthday. She's all alone." She was crying. Grandma never cries. Silence on the other end. Not the silence of a man thinking. The silence of a man whose blood had just turned to ice and whose fists had closed without him telling them to. When Raymond spoke, his voice was low, flat, controlled the way only a man trained to command thousands of soldiers can be controlled when every cell in his body wants to explode. "Where exactly is she?" "Rosie's Route 9 diner, off Highway 401. "Is she safe?" "I think so. But Daddy, she was crying." 3 seconds of silence. 4. 5. "I'm on my way." He hung up, stood from his desk, walked to the door of his office and looked at his aide, a young captain who had never once seen General Turner's jaw set the way it was set right now. Raymond said 5 words. "Get me a bird. Now." The captain didn't ask why, didn't ask where. He picked up the phone and made the call. 14 minutes later, the rotors of a Black Hawk helicopter began to spin on the tarmac at Fort Liberty. General Raymond Turner climbed aboard in full dress uniform, 2 stars on his shoulders, a JAG officer and an aide beside him. The helicopter lifted off, banked south, headed for a roadside diner on Route 9, where a 72-year-old woman in a floral blouse was sitting on a bench, alone, waiting for someone to come. Someone was coming. Florence heard it before she saw it. A low thumping, distant at first, like a heartbeat coming from the sky. Steady, rhythmic, getting louder with every pulse. She looked up, squinted against the sun. Nothing yet, just blue sky and pine trees swaying in the breeze. But the sound kept growing, deeper, heavier. The kind of sound that doesn't come from cars or trucks or anything that belongs on a country road in North Carolina. Inside the diner, the windows began to rattle. Coffee cups trembled on the counter. The jukebox skipped. Customers looked up from their plates, forks frozen mid-bite. Dale stopped talking. He turned toward the window. His smile faded. The thumping became a roar. The neon sign buzzed and flickered. Dust swirled across the parking lot in violent spirals. Napkins flew off tables near the door. The mockingbird on the sign was gone. Then it appeared, rising over the tree line like something out of a war movie. A Black Hawk military helicopter, olive green, massive, blades cutting the air so hard the sound hit your chest before it hit your ears. It descended toward the dirt lot behind the diner, slow, deliberate. The downdraft flattened the grass in every direction, gravel scattered like shrapnel. The diner shook on its foundation. A glass fell off the counter inside and shattered on the tile floor. Every single person in the diner rushed to the windows. The retired couple, the truckers, Connie. Even the cook came out of the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron, mouth open. Dale stood at the front window. His face had gone from red to white. His hands hung at his sides. He didn't move. He didn't speak. The rotors slowed. The dust began to settle.
The helicopter sat in the dirt lot like a beast that had just landed in someone's backyard. The side door slid open. A boot hit the ground, then another. Then a man stepped out, and every molecule of air in that parking lot changed. General Raymond Turner, 6'2", full-dress uniform, jacket pressed to perfection. 2 silver stars on each shoulder, catching the Carolina sun like they were made of lightning. Behind him, a JAG officer in uniform and an aide carrying a leather briefcase. Raymond didn't run. He didn't rush. He walked. The walk of a man who had commanded battalions, who had stood in rooms with senators and 4-star generals, who had made decisions that moved thousands of soldiers across continents. He walked straight to the bench where his mother sat. Florence looked up. Her lip trembled. Her eyes filled. Raymond. He knelt, right there on the concrete. A 2-star general, in full-dress uniform, on his knees in front of a 72-year-old woman on a wooden bench outside a roadside diner. He took her hands in his, both of them, held them tight. "Mama, I'm here. Nobody is ever going to treat you like this again. Not while I'm breathing." Florence broke. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet collapse of everything she'd been holding in. The humiliation, the silence, the loneliness of sitting in a room full of people who wouldn't look at her. It all came out in one breath, one sob pressed into her son's shoulder as he wrapped his arms around her. He held her, didn't say a word, just held her the way she used to hold him when he was 11 years old and his father had just died, and the world didn't make sense anymore. Then he stood. He turned toward the diner. His face was no longer a son's face. It was a general's face. Cold, precise. The kind of face that has ended careers with a single sentence. Dale was standing in the doorway. His mouth was open. His clipboard was gone. His hands were shaking. Raymond walked up to him, stopped 3 feet away, close enough to see the sweat forming on Dale's forehead, close enough to smell the cigarettes on his breath. "You threw my mother's food in the trash." Dale's mouth moved, but nothing came out. "You called her disgusting. You called her a beggar. You told her to pick her food out of the garbage. And then you called the police on a 72-year-old woman who is waiting for me." Dale found his voice. It came out cracked, small. "Sir, I didn't know who she... I was just following policy." "What policy?" Raymond's voice didn't rise. It dropped. "What policy tells you to humiliate an elderly woman? What policy tells you to throw away food someone already paid for? What policy tells you to call a paying customer disgusting?" Dale had no answer. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Nothing. Raymond stepped past him into the diner, looked at Kessler, who was standing near the counter, suddenly rigid, suddenly aware of the 2 stars on the shoulders of the man walking toward him. "Sheriff. General, sir, I wasn't aware of the situation." "You weren't aware that a citizen has the right to sit in a restaurant she paid to eat in? You weren't aware that throwing away someone's property and threatening to drag them out is assault? You didn't think to ask a single question before you escorted a 72-year-old woman out like a criminal?" Kessler said nothing. His hand drifted to his belt, then dropped. There was nothing on that belt that could help him now. Raymond turned back to Dale. "I want your full name, and I want the name and phone number of the owner of this establishment, right now." Dale gave it to him, his voice barely above a whisper. The power in that room had shifted, completely, permanently, and every single person in that diner knew it. Raymond didn't waste a second. He turned to his JAG officer, Major Elaine Caldwell, a woman who had prosecuted cases that made colonels lose their pensions, and gave a single nod. She opened her briefcase, pulled out a legal pad, started writing. "I need names," Raymond said. "Every employee on shift, the sheriff's full name and badge number, the manager's full name and employee ID, and I need the security camera footage from this restaurant, interior and exterior, preserved immediately. If a single frame is deleted, that's destruction of evidence." Dale stood frozen by the door. He hadn't moved since Raymond walked past him. His face was the color of old paper. His lips were dry. He kept wiping his palms on his pants like his hands wouldn't stop sweating. Raymond pulled out his phone, dialed the number Dale had given him, put it on speaker. 2 rings. A man's voice answered. "This is Carl Beckett." "Mr. Beckett, this is General Raymond Turner, United States Army. I'm standing in your restaurant on Route 9 right now. 30 minutes ago, your manager, Dale Greer, threw my 72-year-old mother's food in the trash, called her disgusting, told her to pick it out of the garbage and eat it, and then called the sheriff to have her removed. She had already paid. She was waiting for me. It's her birthday." Silence on the other end. Then a breath. Then a voice that sounded like a man watching his entire business collapse in real time. "General Turner, I don't know what to say. I had no idea. I am so deeply sorry." "I'm not looking for an apology from you, Mr. Beckett. I'm telling you what happened in your establishment, under your name, by a man on your payroll. What you do next is your decision. But I want you to know, this is on camera. A bystander recorded the entire incident, and my legal team is documenting everything." Another silence, shorter this time. "Put him on the phone." Raymond looked at Dale, held the phone out. Dale took it with both hands. His fingers were trembling so badly the phone almost slipped. "Dale, this is Carl. You're fired. Effective immediately. Turn in your keys, leave the premises, do not speak to any customers, do not speak to the press, do not contact this woman or her family. If I find out you deleted any footage, I will personally make sure you never work in food service again. Are we clear?" Dale's mouth moved. A sound came out. Something between yes and a breath that had given up trying to become a word. "I said, are we clear?" "Yes, sir." The line went dead. Dale set the phone on the counter, reached into his pocket, pulled out a ring of keys and placed them next to the phone. His hand was shaking so hard the keys rattled against the surface. He walked toward the front door. Every eye in the diner followed him. The retired couple, the truckers, Connie, the cook in the kitchen doorway. Nobody said a word. Nobody needed to. The silence said everything. Outside, the college student in the silver Honda was still recording. Dale saw the phone pointed at him. He raised his hand to cover his face. Too late. The image was already captured. A disgraced manager, hand over his face, walking to his car while a 2-star general stood behind him with his arms around his elderly mother. That image would be seen by millions. Dale got in his car, started the engine, and drove out of the parking lot without looking back. His tires kicked up dust that drifted slowly across the lot and settled on the bench where Florence had been sitting alone 15 minutes earlier. Inside the diner, a voice broke the silence. "Sir?" Connie Beckett stepped forward. Her eyes were red, her hands were still shaking, but she was standing straight. "Sir, I want you to know, your mother was kind. She paid. She was polite to me. He had no reason to do what he did. None." She paused, swallowed hard. "I should have said something louder. I should have stopped him. I'm sorry." Raymond looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Thank you for saying that. It matters. Florence stood up from the bench, walked inside, looked at Connie, this young woman who had tried, even if she hadn't tried hard enough, and pulled her into a hug. Connie broke, sobbed into Florence's shoulder like a child. In the far corner, Sheriff Kessler set his coffee cup on the counter, adjusted his belt, walked out the side door without a word to anyone. His body camera was still running. Every second of his failure was recorded. He didn't know it yet, but that footage would end his career. The video hit the internet at 6:14 that evening. The college student, her name was Brianna Wells, 20 years old, communications major at UNC Wilmington, posted it on social media with a single caption. This man threw a 72-year-old woman's food in the trash because she was black. Then a helicopter showed up. Watch. 3 minutes and 48 seconds. That's all it took to destroy Dale Greer's life. The clip opened with Florence sitting on the bench outside the diner, wiping a tear from her cheek. Then the sound of rotors. Then the Black Hawk descending behind the building like the hand of God reaching down into a parking lot. Then Raymond stepping out in full dress uniform, 2 stars on his shoulders, kneeling in front of his mother. The internet lost its mind. By midnight, the video had been viewed 2 million times. By the following evening, 6 million. Hashtags erupted across every platform. Hashtag Justice for Florence. Hashtag Rosie's Diner. Hashtag Throw Him in the Trash. News outlets scrambled. Cable networks picked it up. Morning shows called. The story was everywhere. And then, Patricia Holden got involved. Holden was an investigative journalist for WRAL News out of Raleigh, 41 years old, sharp eyes, sharper instincts. She had spent 15 years covering civil rights cases across North Carolina, and when she saw the video, she didn't just see a viral moment, she saw a pattern. She drove to Fayetteville the next morning. Her first stop was the diner. She interviewed the cook, who confirmed that Florence had paid cash at the register before sitting down. She interviewed 2 customers who had been present. Both confirmed Dale's language, his tone, and the moment he slammed the plate into the trash. One of them, the retired husband who had almost stood up, broke down on camera. "I should have said something," he said. "I sat there and watched a man destroy that woman's meal and call her trash, and I didn't move. I'll carry that with me for the rest of my life." Then Holden sat down with Connie Beckett. The interview lasted 40 minutes. Connie told her everything. The insults. The fake card-on-file policy that never existed. The way Dale muttered, "these people," as Florence walked out. And then Connie said something that made Holden stop writing and just stare. This wasn't the first time. Last summer, a black family came in with a reservation for their daughter's birthday. Dale told them there must have been a mistake, said the system didn't show it. I was standing right there. I could see the reservation on the screen. He turned them away. A family with a little girl holding a balloon. Holden dug deeper. She pulled employment records through public requests. She found 3 prior complaints filed by former employees against Dale Greer, all documenting racial discrimination, all buried by previous management, all dismissed without investigation. The story aired 4 days after the incident, 12 minutes on the evening news. It included the viral video, Connie's interview, the retired customer's confession, and a damning timeline of complaints that had been ignored for years. The next morning, Florence Turner, with the full support of her son but entirely in her own name, filed a civil lawsuit against Rosie's Route 9 Diner and its parent company. Her attorney was Lawrence Caldwell, a civil rights lawyer out of Durham who had handled discrimination cases for 2 decades. The suit cited violations of Title II of the Civil Rights Act, North Carolina public accommodation laws, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. It sought compensatory damages, punitive damages, and institutional reform, including mandatory anti-discrimination training for all employees across the chain's 6 locations. The criminal case moved simultaneously. The district attorney's office in Cumberland County charged Dale Greer with 2 counts. First, misdemeanor assault against an elderly person based on the forcible seizure and destruction of property belonging to a senior citizen. Second, filing a false police report for describing Florence as disoriented and causing a disturbance when she had been sitting quietly in a booth she had paid to occupy. Dale's attorney tried to negotiate, tried to argue it was a misunderstanding, tried to claim Dale felt threatened. The prosecution played the bystander's video in the courtroom, 3 minutes and 48 seconds. The judge watched the entire thing without blinking. Dale pleaded no contest. The sentence? 180 days suspended, 200 hours of community service, specifically assigned to a food bank serving low-income families in Fayetteville. Mandatory racial sensitivity training, 40 hours, to be completed within 6 months. A 5-year ban from holding any management position in any food service establishment in Cumberland County. And the civil suit settled 4 months later. The amount was not disclosed, but sources close to the case confirmed it was substantial, enough to endure, enough to remember. Sheriff Dwight Kessler's reckoning came separately. An internal affairs review, triggered by the viral video and a formal complaint filed by General Turner's legal team, examined Kessler's body camera footage from that afternoon. The footage showed everything. It showed him asking Florence for ID without asking Dale a single question. It showed him telling Florence to step outside without investigating her claim that her food had been thrown away. It showed him suggesting she go to McDonald's because it was more her speed. The review board found that Kessler had failed to conduct even a basic inquiry before siding with Dale. He had treated a complaint from a white business manager as fact, and a complaint from a black elderly woman as noise. He was placed on administrative leave. 3 weeks later, facing mounting public pressure and a second internal review, he resigned. His statement was 4 sentences long and contained no apology. The diner itself was transformed. Carl Beckett, shaken to his core by what had happened under his name, shut down the Route 9 location for 2 weeks. Every employee was retrained. New management was hired. A zero-tolerance anti-discrimination policy was posted at every entrance. And then he did something nobody expected. He called Florence, asked if she would allow him to rename the restaurant in her honor. Florence was quiet on the phone for a long time. Then she said yes. The new sign went up on a Saturday morning, red letters on a white background, Miss Florence's Kitchen. Below it, in smaller script, everyone belongs here. Florence cut the ribbon herself. She wore her floral blouse, her church earrings. Amara stood on one side. Raymond, out of uniform, in a simple gray suit, stood on the other. The diner also established the Florence Turner Scholarship Fund, an annual award for local students of color pursuing degrees in education. A tribute to 40 years of teaching. A tribute to a woman who spent her whole life telling children they were worth something. Florence was given a lifetime meal pass. She laughed when they handed it to her. "I just hope nobody throws this one in the trash." The whole room laughed. And then they cried. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning, the sun came through the lace curtains on Maple Drive the same way it always did. Florence stood at the kitchen sink, filling her watering can. The faucet squeaked the way it had for 20 years. She'd never fixed it. Earl used to say he'd get to it on Saturday. Saturday never came. Now the squeak was just another piece of him she kept. She carried the can to the porch, watered the gardenias first, Earl's favorite, then the marigolds, then the row of petunias along the railing that she'd planted the spring after he died because she needed something alive to take care of. She set the can down.
wiped her hands on her apron, walked inside to the mantel. Earl's photograph. Same factory uniform, same kind eyes, same smile. She stood in front of it the way she did every morning. But today she was smiling in a way she hadn't smiled in a long time. They named it after me, baby. Can you believe that? Miss Florence's Kitchen. Got a sign and everything, red letters. You would have laughed so hard. She touched the glass with her fingertip. And your grandson? Well, your son. That boy landed a whole helicopter behind the restaurant. A helicopter, Earl. You raised one dramatic child, you know that? She laughed. The kind of laugh that starts in the belly and fills the room and sounds like the purest thing in the world. Her phone rang. She picked it up, flipped it open. Happy belated birthday, Mama. Again, for the 10th time. Boy, you have called me every single day since it happened. I'm fine. I know you're fine. I just like hearing you say it. A pause. Warm. Full. Mama, I'm sorry about the helicopter. I know it was a lot. Florence laughed again. Raymond, you always did know how to make an entrance. Your daddy was the same way. Walked into every room like he owned it. Except he was kind enough to make everyone else feel like they owned it too. I learned from both of you. You learned from your father. I just made sure you did your homework. They laughed together. The sound traveled through the phone line like something holy. That afternoon, Amara came to visit. They sat on the porch swing, the one that hadn't moved in years, but moved today, because Amara pushed off with her foot and Florence let her. They drank sweet tea, watched the neighbor's cat cross the yard, listened to the birds. Grandma, can I ask you something? Always. When he was saying all those things to you, when he threw your food away, weren't you scared? Florence took a sip of her tea, set it down on the armrest. I was terrified, baby. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold my phone. But scared and silent aren't the same thing. You can be scared and still stay. You can be shaking and still not move. That's what your grandfather taught me. That's what 40 years of teaching taught me. You don't leave a room just because someone in it decided you don't belong. Amara leaned her head on her grandmother's shoulder. And when you see someone else being made small, Florence continued, you stand up. Even if your voice shakes, even if you're the only one, you stand up. Because silence is a choice too, and it's never the right one. So here's my question for you. If you were sitting in that diner, watching that man throw a 72-year-old woman's food in the trash, would you have said something? Or would you have been one of the 12 who stayed silent? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to hear it. And if this story hit you somewhere deep, smash that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe, because we've got more stories like this coming, and trust me, you don't want to miss them. Stand up, speak up, because silence is a choice too, and it's never the right one.
I want you to hear this. Being scared and being silent are not the same thing. You can be scared and still stay. You can be shaking and still not move. You can have tears in your eyes and still hold your head up. Fear doesn't mean you have to leave the room. Fear does mean you are human. What you do with the fear, that's what defines you. So don't leave. Don't shrink. Don't hand your dignity to someone who doesn't deserve to hold it. You paid your way. You earned your seat. And no one gets to tell you that you don't belong. But here's the part that matters even more. If you're sitting in that room and it's not you, if it's someone else being small, someone else being humiliated, someone else sitting alone while the whole room looks away, speak up. Even if your voice shakes, even if you're the only one, because 12 people who stay quiet are worse than one person who cruel. Silence isn't neutral. Silence is a choice. and it's never the right one. Like, share, and subscribe. Real stories, real justice every week. And remember, you don't leave a room just because someone in it decided you don't belong. You stay and you let them learn who they are dealing with.